Ladies and Gentlemen, meine Damen und Herren, Minasama, Konnichiwa, guten Morgen, einen wunderschönen guten Morgen. Good morning from Frankfurt Bonames, here with us to our live stream, everybody attending us online, and of course everybody participating today who are here with us in the venue in Frankfurt. It's a great honor having you, and it's a great pleasure that you actively chose today to be with us. Ahead of us are 90 minutes, 90 exciting minutes, I have to say, because it is filled with manifold information, with very interesting information, given by extraordinary speakers, and discussing a really most relevant topic and issues. And personally, I'm truly convinced that the sheer odds of this very specific setting taking place today is like winning the lottery, because I give you 3 reasons for that. The first reason is we managed to find matching dates with our 4 distinguished speakers today, Ms. Saori Dubourg, Mr. Yoshihiro Ikegawa, Mr. Christian Heller, Mr. Gerhard Wiesheu. Thank you very much for making room in your very busy schedules and calendars today. The second reason is that all of you here with us in the live stream chose to be with us, and we matched your calendar as well. So thank you very much for being with us. And the third reason is that we secured Haus Metzler here in Frankfurt Bonames as a venue, as a location, and I have to admit it's a beautiful ambience for meeting and for networking. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Anne Pomse, Managing Director of Nichidoku Sangyo-kyokai, Deutsch-Japanischer Wirtschaftskreis. With me on stage is Johanna Schilling, Managing Director of Ecos Consult. We partnered with Ecos Consult on this very special occasion, and we will both guiding you through the evening in Japan and the morning in Germany, and moderate you through the event.
Yes, very glad to be with you today. Just a few words on the topic of our today's event. So the transformation of the industry is a big issue, and especially when it comes to energy consuming industries like the chemical industry. And when we talk about sustainability, that doesn't only mean the planet, it's also about the people working for the companies, the people working on the whole value chain. And in the end, it's about profit, of course. So an increasing number of investors put weight on all 3 aspects. So environment, social governance, and the profit in the end. And the question is, how can companies find balance between the economic success, social responsibility, and the protection of the environment and the climate? And furthermore, how can all 3 aspects be accounted and be informed to the investors in a transparent way? And this is what we are going to talk about today. It has been discussed for a long time, also between Germany and Japan. And I'm really looking forward to hear more and discuss more about that with our experts today.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware of what is the meaning of ESG, of environmental social governance. We all know the topic of SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. We know CSR, corporate social responsibility, and of course the numerous accompanying directives, taxonomies, and all the reports we have to fill out and have to comply with. Since the information is very widespread and very manifold, we decided to provide you an introductory impulse and to get us all on the same page, and to start with an introduction or a speech before we dive into the discussion. Hence, it's our honor to announce our first speaker today, Gerhard Wiesheu. Mr. Wiesheu is chairman of our DJW, and he holds numerous honorary offices, amongst them at Frankfurt Main Finance and at the Japanese-German Center in Berlin. Your second professional occupation is being member of the executive board at Bankhaus Metzler, and you have been shaping the understanding of ESG for quite some time now, over several years, and it's our honor to have you. Mr. Wiesheu, lieber Gerhard, the stage is yours.
Well, Anne, thank you very much for introducing me. Thank you very much for having me today as a speaker. And thank you very much to come to our place here. Unfortunately, the people participating just via internet can't see our location here. It's, I would say, a very sustainable location, because it was built, when it comes to construction cost and footprint, the oldest part was built 600 years ago and was used all the time. So that is real sustainable, situation, I would call it. And you mentioned it, Mrs. Schilling. It's not just about ecology, of course, the S, the social contribution. This building was also serving as a shelter for people during war. You may had many wars. We had Napoleon here, we had the First World War, we had the Second World War. And after the Second World War, 60 people lived here, refugees, lived here until 1970, because housing had to be built and Frankfurt was destroyed. So people stayed here for almost 20 years. 60 people, you can imagine it was quite a dense situation, but it also had this aspect of sustainability. So you recognize already sustainability has many, many different aspects. And we all struggle sometimes to find the right definition. We know, depending on the jurisdiction, whether it's the US, whether it's Asia, whether it's EU, we have now the taxonomy, of course. But it is not so easy, I think, to get one clear-cut definition. I'm very happy that the Deutsch-Japanische Wirtschaftskreis, the German-Japanese Business Association, can play a major role in transforming our economies. We are a bridge builder. We bring people together on the one hand side, and I think we initiate also business which is good for the society and which is good for our both countries. In this capacity, I traveled with Mr. Scholz, our Bundeskanzler, in April to Japan, just for 24 hours. And I traveled last week with Bundespräsident, with our president, Mr. Steinmeier, to Japan. And guess what was the topic, or the topics? Two important topics. One topic was, of course, security issue. We all know that the world has changed since, 24th of February this year. The global order of security, of course, in Europe, was completely destroyed now. Now we have to rebuild it. So Japan and Germany must have a special role in that. But the second big topic, it was maybe equally important even, is how can we join forces in transforming our economies? Because we all know, we, Germany, Japan, we are technology provider. We have the innovation capabilities, which is needed in order to make sure that we really can overcome this very big challenge. We talk about challenges, but at the same time, of course, it's a huge opportunity for both countries, for both sectors when it comes to manufacturing. So that is something I think which we also have to bear in mind. Energy transforming, we see what has happened after the aggression of Russia to Ukraine. The energy prices went up considerably. And the question is, how can we substitute fossil energy with renewable energy, such as hydrogen, of course, such as wind power, and so on. Because at the end, energy, the E of ESG, influences also S. And why is that? Because if we do not overcome this fossil energy situation, then of course we will have a climate crisis on the one hand side, but on the S side, we will lose wealth. Just imagine how much money goes out of Japan and Germany now because of the high energy prices. And this can destabilize our societies, because not everybody can afford to pay for high energy prices. So you see that everything is interlinked. I wanted to draw your attention to that point, I think, which is very much important when we start our discussions with our very prestigious, I think, panelists who have a lot of know-how about these topics. Now, the other thing is, when you talk about transforming the economy, you need data. You need a lot of data. I know BASF, for example, Mitsubishi Chemical, etc. You are active on a worldwide basis, and the question is how you can get the data to measure for the manufacturing side. But it is also, and now it comes to my profession, a very difficult situation for the financial industry, because we also need the data, because I always joke as it, the regulator has outsourced the transformation to the financial sector. We have to make sure how well we deploy the funds, the assets to the companies who need financing. And that is a very important mission we have. And I just remember 2 weeks ago, ECB, our regulator, has sent us letters and said, well, please make sure that when you do financing, look at your loan portfolio, whether you comply with ESG regulation, because if you don't, in 2024, we will visit you, we will have a look at your loan book, and if it is not compliant, you get a surcharge on capital requirements. So you see, this is not an easy situation. In our case, for example, we are not so active when it comes to loans, but we are an asset manager. So we are more or less in the same situation, because when we manage the entrusted money from, let's say, churches, from pension funds, etc., we have to make sure that we are also compliant. And that is really a major challenge which we face at the moment. In this connection, I'm looking at Christian Heller, who is a panelist today, and I'm very grateful to him, because you all might know that we have an institution in Frankfurt which is called ISSB. It's called the International Sustainability Standard Board. We are very happy that they came to Frankfurt, to our financial center here. But we are also happy, or equally happy, that we get the initiative now to have an international, reliable disclosure KPI system, let's call it this way. And this will be very important, I think, to increase efficiency on the one hand side for the companies, for the corporates, but also for the financial industry, in order to really make the transformation, let's say, doable for both sides. So that is something I think we are happy about. I'm also very happy about the situation that in 2 weeks' time I will be in Tokyo. We will have a signing ceremony in the German embassy in Tokyo. Mr. Nakaso, the chairman of FinCity, he is the representative of the financial center Tokyo, and myself in the capacity of Frankfurt Main Finance, I'm the chairman there, so I represent the Frankfurt as a financial center. We will sign a cooperation agreement about the situation, how we make sure that both financial centers are really equipped for the transformation process. There's a lot of information we can share and join forces. So you see, and I come to an end now with my introductory statement, there's a lot what we can do between Germany and Japan. And my take is always, our relationship goes back over 160 years. It was always good, a good relationship. We complemented each other, we supported each other. But I think the situation now, thinking of the geopolitical situation, thinking of the transformation of our economies, our relationship is now even more important than in the past, I would say. And we have to join forces, speak up, and defend also our interests as a free trader, as a democracy, also for the future. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to my speech, and I'm looking forward to a very inspiring seminar. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Wiesheu, for setting the stage for our today's panel discussion, and for stressing the importance of data. We'll talk about data maybe later a lot, and also for making the link to the financing industry, the financial industry. Now, we are very much looking forward to our discussion today, and I would like to introduce our first panelist, which is Ms. Saori Dubourg. So I would like to welcome you to the stage here and take a seat. In the middle, yeah. So Ms. Dubourg is member of the Board of Executives at BASF company and responsible for petrochemicals in the region of Europe and for sustainability. And furthermore, she's one of the 15 appointed members of the German Council for Sustainable Development, which has been funded 20 years ago. And this council gives advice to the federal government on key topics of sustainability strategy and also sustainability accounting standards. And furthermore, since last year, Ms. Dubourg is also a member, or has been a member of the steering committee of the G7 Impact Task Force, which aims to mobilize private capital at scale for people and planet. So that all fits very well to today's topic, and we're really happy to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. The second one is Mr. Ikegawa. I have the honor to introduce you just briefly. Your timeline and CV is very impressive. Please forgive me, I had to pick just a couple of points. You began your career at Mitsubishi Chemical Corporation, and you have more than 30 years of experience in the petrochemical industry. And in your very early career, you were already involved in building business international-wide. You were stationed in Indonesia and India. You contributed to the development of the Asian-wide businesses of Mitsubishi Chemical, also in Singapore and Thailand. And from 2018 to 21, your capacity was a managing corporate executive officer as well as chief sustainability officer. Additionally, in 2019, you assumed the board of director in Mitsubishi Chemical Corporation. It's an honor that you came to Germany again for this special occasion. Please take your seat at the stage. Welcome.
Yes, and then another outstanding expert on today's topic is Mr. Christian Heller, Vice President at BASF and COO of the Value Balancing Alliance. You can also take a seat here. And some few words. So before your current position, you was leading BASF's Value to Society program and the Human Rights program. And among others, you're also a member of the Sustainable Finance Platform of the EU and a member of the Practitioner Council of the Impact Weighted Accounts Initiative at Harvard Business School. And you just told me that you're also co-chair of the Sustainable Finance Advisory Board to the German government, which is kind of a, well, counterpart to the board you're a member of, Ms. Dubourg. So this is very, well, fitting very well together today.
Perfect. Thank you very much for taking your seats, for being here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it has been stressed once or twice that we today focus on transforming industry towards a sustainable future, and how the efforts of ESG and how the regulations and how the efforts of the results showing them are being made visible, are being made comparable, are being made more measurable, and along the way even more transparent for all of us. And with the following questions, we of course know that given your professional background, you might put special emphasis on the developments of the chemical industry and general value balance. So our first question would be addressed to Mr. Ikegawa and Ms. Dubourg. From your perspective, looking at the ESG and more specific on the E of the ESG, what does sustainability mean for your industry, for your companies, for BASF, for Mitsubishi Chemical? I imagine like a timeline from where you're coming from, what's the status quo, where are you heading, what's your idea of sustainability? Mr. Ikegawa. Yeah, it's working.
Okay. Thank you very much for the question. It is very much honor for me to attend this meeting, and so I think the reason why I selected the panelist because of one of the member of the Value Balancing Alliance. Dr. Hera is a CEO and Saori-san is chairman. That's why maybe I is selected as a panelist here. So as per the sustainability, the sustainability itself already had been established in our corporate philosophy and business strategy and management index and the organization structure. Now implementation of the step for the transformation on the ground is the issue. Main challenge include development of the measurement of the methodology to be used for the communication with the customers about our added value. And securing the resource such as funding and the human resources for sustainable transformation, such as R&D and the new investment. And the development of the social system which encourage transformation in collaboration with national and the regional government and the society. As for the measurement methodology, we are developing the LCA tools, starting from scope 1 to scope 3, and the cost LCA, social impact assessment, and finally, monetary conversion of social values, so that we can demonstrate our contribution to sustainability. Participation in VBA is exactly in this context. We are throwing the huge resources into investment for the realization of the GHG reduction target and the carbon neutrality roadmap and R&D for artificial photosynthesis and other technology for the hydrogen society. We think the hydrogen would be the future key material for the all of industry, not only refinery, coal, steel, chemical, but also automotive energy. So how to get such a green hydrogen by the very competitive cost? That may be the key issue. Now we are developing the direct breakup system by using the photosynthesis catalyst. So now the Japanese government support fully the R&D cost about it. And also, we are now using the new catalyst for the methanol. Now the methanol is producing with hydrogen and the CO. But in the future, hydrogen and the CO2, that should be the main material for the methanol. Now the methanol can be transferred to olefins. So such kind of technology is proven. So in the future, maybe 2035 or such kind of the future, we will combine such a green hydrogen and CO2 using methanol process. If so, chemical business would be the beyond zero production system in the future. That is our basic policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, good. So first of all, Ikegawa-san, thank you very much for your kind words. I have to say, I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you so much, because for me this is really a personal contribution I would like to make also to this relationship between Japan and Germany, which I appreciate much. And Ikegawa-san has supported also the VBA since many years, so this is an excellent example how cross-cultural collaboration can lead to new innovation, as Mr. Wiesheu said. Now, for us in BASF, we see a major transformation. So we came from the age of globalization, which was very much driven by, a view on market share gains, volume-driven business models. But what is coming up now, and we are in the middle of this paradigm shift, is a new economy, as indicated in the entry speech. We are at the beginning of a resource-efficient economy. And the interesting part is that resources need to be used much more cleverly in future than before in all aspects. So this means we are really seeing that more and more business models are also disrupted in terms of value generation, not only volume. So be it recycling, be it leasing models, sharing models from our customers. And this is fundamentally different from before. And even values, like take human rights, formerly more soft topics, get hard laws globally. Now, this is a challenge, of course, because we have a lot of more obligations and reporting rules in the meantime. So if I stagger the transformation in 3 layers, one is the energy transformation. I think Ikegawa-san gave an excellent example of hydrogen and what the industry is facing. We as BASF, we are looking at various technologies and are experimenting also. We have invested a lot in wind parks as a transformational renewable source in future, but we are also, of course, looking into hydrogen technologies, CCS, CCU, because we are convinced we have to look at various pilots depending on the plant structure, what fits best. If you ask me, given the specific situation that we had in Europe on gas, and I'm personally affected as I'm in charge of the European business, this is an interesting one because it will accelerate also the step into renewables. Why? Because we have seen and we have calculated over the last summer months what is the impact and how long will this last. And today I have to admit I'm a little bit more optimistic than maybe 3 months before because the gas peak that we saw in Europe was triggered by 2 main effects. One was not only the Ukraine-Russia crisis, but this very fast buying, purchasing behavior of various member states in the European Union that were not coordinated. So there's clearly a psychological peak in the pricing that developed, plus some nuclear power-related challenges in France. And this is exactly what led to some price peaks. However, if you look going forward a little bit deeper, there is also a positive sign that more and more states are moving into other directions of energy grids that should relieve a little bit the LNG situation, we hope. So what is the challenge here? We need roadmaps. Roadmaps together with governments, planning security, how much industries are needing in energy and how do we collect this together. And this is a challenge globally at the moment at almost every country. So it's a lot of dialogue we need. The second layer is innovation as a transformational change. Globally, we see a lot of regulation coming up. In Europe alone, 7,000 new regulations that are coming up for our industry. But, and I know that this is seen very critical, I want to emphasize also the positives. It comes with a lot of business risks on one side, but if you look at this, 140 new innovation markets are created while we speak. And these markets are farm to fork, for example, we have different technologies, sustainable transportation, totally new materials in the energy grid, and so on and so forth. And these markets come with an average growth rate of 2 to 35%. So this is an opportunity, and that's why I would like to emphasize that's the new resource-efficient economy opportunity we need to grab. And the last point is the profit, impact, and P&L. You were already emphasizing how important it is to have a joint language, especially in the transformation. You have to imagine, to make it simple, in the P&L of companies, if we invest, for example, in energy grids of the future, it's a huge invest that sometimes is not always EBIT accretive easily, but it reduces significantly environmental cost. If the environmental cost is not part of the equation in the capital market and not seen, it's just a loose end. And this is why it is so important, also leading to Christian Heller later, that we incorporate environmental and social costs more properly into our reporting. Only then, if you have a joint language, we can make sure that true value that we generate is seen by the capital market.
Yeah, thank you very much also for the insight into the current crisis we are facing. This is very interesting how companies like BASF are seeing the threat or the challenge we have now. It's a threat, I'd say, by the war in the Ukraine and the lack of gas. And well, now I would come to our third panelist here. We talked about, or you raised the word a joint language. We need a joint language to make the efforts of the companies in the ESG aspects transparent for the investors, because as we heard, an increasing number of investors is putting weight on those factors. And there are a lot of activities going on. We have the ESG reporting, we have corporate sustainability reporting, we have triple bottom line accounting, as it's also called. We have activities, initiatives on the EU level, in Germany, internationally. The International Sustainability Standard Board has also been mentioned. And you are a representative of the Value Balancing Alliance. So what would interest me, and maybe also the general audience, I'd say, is the difference or the similarities, the connection to the ongoing ESG reporting, but mainly the differences of value balancing accounting. So what's the basic idea of it?
It's working. So first of all, many thanks for having me. Many thanks to Ikegawa-san and Saori for the introductions, Gerd. So I think it was mentioned before, we're entering a phase of a new economy. And in this new economy, we need to ask several questions, and it's really starting off, what is corporate success in this time? So we are used in the end to financial figures, we are used to shareholder maximization, but now if you're looking at the World Economic Forum, for example, this notion of stakeholder capitalism, what does this really mean? How do we define corporate success? And if we define corporate success in a different way, so going beyond just the financial performance, we need to ask the question, how do we measure this success? And this is the whole space of ESG, sustainability, where we're currently really in the phase of defining in the end the grammars and the dictionaries, how you're speaking in different languages next to financials, so natural, social, human capital. And this is currently the journey we are in, and we need to standardize this as much as possible. Gerd pointed out the ISSB, but there are a few additional standard setters on the international level who are currently really defining how we should measure. And not just measure, how we should also disclose the results so that we can demonstrate to our stakeholders, especially the value creation of a company. And if we get this data done, we need to ask ourselves, how do we steer the company? So Mitsubishi Chemicals and BASF have set the net zero targets. So what is happening if you have a trade-off between your financial goals and your net zero goal? What is then good performance, and how do you make a decision? And this is where we are still really in the phases to define how we are going to do this. The solution is not yet there. But this is where we call on the corporates, join this movement, engage, speak up, and really co-define how we are going to shape the system. Otherwise, we will be shaped by regulators, by the civil society, by academics, and you see certain regulations, especially in the EU, like the taxonomy regulation, which is not really pragmatic, to say it mildly. Mm-hmm. So the work what the Value Balancing Alliance is doing, together with practitioners from the corporate sector, from the finance sector, and the assurance companies, so the big four are also involved in academics. We are developing methodologies how you can measure the sustainability performance beyond just the financial figures and also going beyond ESG. We are talking about impact. So what is the real value contribution? Making one example, currently we are measuring, let's say, the liters of waters we are extracting for our production. But it makes a huge difference if you're extracting a liter of water at a site like BASF next to the Rhine River, or if you extract a liter of water in a desert. And we are putting a price tag on this liter of water to put it into context, to see the real costs or the real value we are contributing as a business. But we need to ensure that these methodologies enable the companies, first of all, to comply with all these reporting requirements currently coming up. Here the big four auditing firms play a major role because we are assessing and auditing and assuring your reports. But the second part is we need to go beyond just the compliance aspect of reporting. So we are trying to provide additional data via these methodologies for internal decision making at the corporate level. As said before, how do you measure net zero? How do you measure financial figures? How do you get social issues like health and safety training and others into the equation? And when it's really about balancing. This is how do you bring these four languages, these four capitals together in one setup. And then to demonstrate to the financial market, especially like the Metzler Bank. This is the value contribution of our company, and this is how we are transforming in this unsecure situation our value contribution over the next years. So the link to the standard setters is, via these methodologies, in the end you're collecting the data to report, but going beyond, getting the right data for much better decision making.
Thank you very much for your introductory statements. I have to say it's not just an introduction, but also just already diving deep into the topic of ESG, of measurement. And I would like to pick up the measurement especially, because to me it seems that everything that's involved with hydrogen is quite easy, I have to say, to measure if you use a drop of water from the desert or alongside Rhine River. But what about the S and the G? Because to me it seems that, for example, intellectual property, human rights issues, diversity, how do you put a number on the S and the G? What is the idea for Mitsubishi Chemical?
Yeah, it may not be a direct answer against your question, but now we are Mitsubishi Chemical using a very unique corporate philosophy that calls Kaiteki philosophy. Kaiteki itself is a Japanese language, but the definition of the Kaiteki is sustainable well-being and well-being for people, society, and our planet Earth. And the unique point is we are measuring our business, our performance by 3 dimensions. First one is, of course, economics. That is the management of the economy. And the second one is sustainability. That is the management of sustainability. And the last one is innovation progress. That is management of technology. These 3 axes are our measurement system for the performance of the company activity. Such kind of the philosophy is very basic, sharing with VBA concept and also ESG concept. So for the Mitsubishi Chemical Group, by using such kind of 3 dimensions point for our measurement of the company enterprise value, that may be one of the answer against how to introduce the ESG, all of factors to the company management. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. A similar question to you, Ms. Dubourg. So what is the path that you envision at BASF to implement sustainability accounting, and what are your experiences, challenging hurdles? Yeah, just share with us.
Yeah, just building a little bit a bridge to what you also said in the question before. I think the environmental data is probably in our company more robust because we have a lot of years of experience working with customers on it, and it's the easiest part is maybe the CO2 measurement, but the social dimension, as mentioned by Ikegawa-san, is more challenging, of course. And I would like to give some examples how we work. We have started 15 years ago with the first trials on measuring impact. At that time, we used a lot of data upside, up, down, as a top down, and then checked it bottom up. And what you basically see, for example, in the social dimension, it depends on the topic. If you talk about diversity, it's for us very clear target setting, because that's what we realize is important as a message to the entire team, that you really communicate clearly where do you want to go from today until tomorrow. But it's not only this, it's a lot of work on culture and inclusion. Do you allow different opinions? Do you allow different views? This is an ongoing target, I would say. Second, if you think about topics like social governance, and that's getting more and more challenging, of course, with what I said before. We are, for example, working with an external human rights council, people that challenge us in various topics, because very often challenges are not, they do not have just one answer. Usually they come with dilemmas. I give you one example from the agricultural business. If you think about topics like biodiversity versus the growth of human population, I mean, how do you prioritize between all these factors? Yeah, we have lost 40% of arable land over the last years. We need to increase the efficiency of food production by 50%. With 3 billion more people, and we need to achieve biodiversity. And this is a typical, for me, task. How do you get the best equation of this triangle? And this is actually what sustainability is about. There is no absolute answer, and for this we need measurement. And similar like you, Ikegawa-san, what we use then is in the VBA a method where we can calculate these impacts. That is what Christian said before. For example, when you have decisions on investment of plants, we have looked at 2 countries. From an NPV, they looked similar, but the social dimension was one country had more social value created because of labor cost that were better, and the other one had an environmental problem because it was a water-stressed area. And all of a sudden you see, the water value is a problem. And by having monetarized numbers, you really get a much better decision grid, which we formerly didn't have. So it's really replacing values with opinions. And this makes sustainability decisions then better and easier for us and more profound.
Okay, yeah, so let's dive even more deeper into measurement and how to measure data, especially those soft factors. I think emissions, energy, consumption, etc., vehicle fleet is easy to measure and put into figures. But you just came up with some examples for the soft factors. But what I still don't understand, and what I would like to ask you, Mr. Haller, is if I understand the basic idea of the value balancing correctly, is to translate those data, also including the soft factors, into the figures and put them really in the balancing sheets of the company. So how do you really translate it? How is that so that the profit, the value profit, can be measured?
So I think this goes back what I mentioned in the beginning. We are here on the journey and in the development. And what we see is when you're looking at the whole history of sustainability, ESG reports, however they are called, you had more or less the storytelling exercise in the beginning. And step by step, we are improving the storytelling with quantitative figures. Still, we have the main challenge that you really can't compare one report to the next because it's quite a lot of information in a written format. If you compare this to the financial statements of a company, the analysts look at this one, 5 minutes it takes, and then we can compare 5 companies next to each other and we know what's going on in the financials. We need to get to the same situation when we're talking about sustainability in general. Therefore, it's first of all really important that we are standardizing the data, what we need, but we also need to get rid of this whole storytelling exercise and put sustainability into numbers. And numbers, yes, and money is the language businesses understand, analysts understand, and we just need to build this stepping stone. The most prominent example is what most of all know, how do you put a price tag on carbon? So you have certain measurement frameworks behind. Most prominently is the social cost of carbon, where we can argue is $50, is $500 per ton, where we need to get to conclusions and to definitions how we do this. But not just carbon, as Saori mentioned, we need to put the other indicators also into the equation. Because if you're just reducing your CO2 emissions, you might have a huge land use and biodiversity issue. For example, if you're replacing, let's say, conventional feedstock like oil and gas with palm kernel oil, especially in the chemical production. So you need to get additional data in to have a complete picture of your impacts. Where we need to go to, and I think this is a development what we currently foresee, business practitioners, also standard setters, accountancy associations, but also in Germany, for example, there is in the coalition contract a note in a paragraph in that CO2 needs to be brought into the balance sheet of companies. Not talking about now for the accountants and the lawyers about the consequences. But where we need to get to is that we have, similar to the financial statements, a sustainability statement. And what I foresee for the next, let's say, 5 years, next, if you're opening up a corporate report, page 3, you have the financials, as you know, P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, full stop. But next to this one, on page 4, you have one page with all sustainability data across the complete value chain in monetized figures. If you're looking 10 years ahead, most probably the current financial statement will be fully replaced with a sustainability statement, where you have line items in like CO2, like water, like health and safety, like trainings and everything else, in one big statement talking about the value contribution of a company. These discussions are ongoing with all legal consequences of what this might have with regard to stewardship at board level, with regard to dividend payments, and so on and so on. But we all know, if you're looking at book and market value, we have quite a mismatch currently, especially for stock-listed companies. If you're looking at enterprise value calculations in M&A processes, it's a huge difference what is in the financials and what you have as a real value, talking about intangibles, for example. And here we need to get really quantified figures in, and the monetization is just the next step to make it much more easy for companies also to integrate it into the accounting systems.
Do you want to comment?
No, just maybe to add and support what Christian said. So we looked at 100 variables, for example, of what makes a share price these days of companies. And today we are at 17% of ESG performance in the share price is already triggered by ESG. Yeah? So that the way how much your share price is weighted is increasing linked to ESG. And what is remarkable, since the last, I would say, 5 years, we really see an exponential curve also in the capital market. We are currently at 2.7 trillion US dollars of asset under management going into sustainable investments. That's an increase over the last year of more than 33%, and 80% going back also is already in Europe. So there's a lot of ESG funding coming. So one thing is clear, a good strategy is not about looking just for trends, but for me a good strategy is also asking what will remain relevant in 20 years from now. And one thing is for sure, to support what Christian said, climate change will not go away. So every single millimeter of advantage that we generate from a corporate side, this will be true competitive edge also among the relation between Japan and Germany. Innovative solutions, they will be still important in 20 years. And with the increase of climate change challenges, the pressure, and that's the challenge for companies, from capital markets, from regulations will increase.
I would like to pick up on what you said about the money, combining with your buzzword dilemma. Because we all know, Mr. Heller already outlined that a lot of the competences can be drawn from financial reporting with 5-10 years to the ESG reporting to put into one figure in one report. In some cases, on the other hand, new competences, knowledge, people, the talents of tomorrow have to be trained, have to be learned, money has to be invested to get the reporting done. How are you planning on financing all this, Mr. Ikegawa?
Financing order. So the TCFD, that is very standard for the attitude of the financial institute. So in such a situation, now the financial institute are seeking for the green investment. I think that there are many essential the materials in the industrial sector. All of such essential materials produced by the fossil feedstock basis. That is a fact. So all of the stoppage of the investment to such kind of the fossil industry, I think the total industry cannot be survivable, cannot be sustainable. That's why some stable and the minimum investment should be kept in the future. But on the other hand, more than such kind of the investment to the how to say, the how to abate CO2 business, the financiers should invest more, invest to the green transformation the items. Such kind of the balance would be the very important for the financial institutes. That is our idea. So now the Mitsubishi UFJ banks now the leader to study how is increase such kind of the GX investment in Japanese industry. So Mitsubishi Chemical Group also joined such kind of study team. So I think that not only Japan but also Germany, such kind of the tendency may be very, how to say, important movement in the financial side.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of started out also by putting out a green bond, for example, as one example, where you have to deliver then on the impact created. So, you know, for me, it's really about hard prioritization, because you are absolutely right. There's a huge investment going now into the renewable transformation, especially in our industry, and we can't do it all. Yeah, it's really about what are the key focus areas where we want to be leading and what is essential in this transformation. The challenge for the industry is clearly this is about the license to operate for the future. So not doing it, I think, is more risky than going after it. But the financial trajectory, and this is why measuring the true impact we create, including the reduction of the environmental cost, will be important. Because what I see at the moment, there's one principle that is maybe not clearly pronounced in the capital market yet, and that's the principle of inclusion. There is a tendency that financing goes more into already green areas, but in reality, the Paris Climate Protocol will not be achieved if not all the industries are included, because the bigger emission is at the beginning of the value chain. So if these parts are excluded, we cannot achieve the Paris Climate Protocol. So what we need, and this is really something we have to work on also in the taxonomy and these principles, that we have an inclusive capital market whereby in each industrial sector, those who perform and bring a positive impact are then the ones that are invested into. And this is why I think this is a very important principle we also need to emphasize as an industry across, because otherwise it's hard to get there.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we really have two pioneers sitting here, Mitsubishi Chemical and also BASF, when it comes to these challenges. But I understand the Value Balancing Alliance is kind of initiative of such big companies, you know, or rather big companies, I say. What about the smaller companies? I mean, in Germany, the German economy consists to a large extent of SMEs. And is it feasible for them to implement such a system as you just explained, the value balancing?
So, first of all, yes, it's big corporates who came together in the Value Balancing Alliance, and usually they have the resources and the capacities to think upfront and in the end to set up the systems. Yeah, that's clear. But this system, and we talked about a new economy, which will not just be driven by the big corporates, especially in countries like Japan and in Germany. So we need to bring the SMEs along this path. But if you're looking at the SMEs at this point in time, I'm not yet talking about the compliance issue, which especially will hit European SMEs heavily. They are not yet at this level of knowledge and skills to fully understand this whole ESG development, sustainability development, transition pathways, all of these buzzwords. So what we need to do, and here we need to come back to the stakeholder notions, governments, associations, and other initiatives need to engage with the SMEs. But we also need to train, this goes back to the other part, skills to schools and universities. Because here you still see that mainly the financial figures are driving business administration courses. With regard to SMEs, what we are currently doing as Value Balancing Alliance, we are reaching out to medium-sized enterprises to bring them closer to these thinking and concepts what we have, and also to test with them, do they have already the data available to run these assessments? And for them, it's going to be essential in the end to stay competitive in the market. Because if I'm looking just at Europe, the increase of the regulation currently coming up from Brussels will request companies now with 250 employees, and this is medium-sized enterprises, to come up with similar reports as the big ones. And even if you're not hit by the regulation, companies like Mitsubishi, like BASF, they will need to ask the supply chains, please give us the data, because they have a scope 3 requirement to report about. And now I'm looking also at the financial market. We have also regulation. If I want to give a loan to somebody, I need to get ESG data. Pointed this out. So if you are a bakery around the corner, maybe in a few months' time, you need to come up with whatever kind of ESG data. Otherwise, you don't get access to capital. So it will hit all of them. So for sure, we need to work on solutions for especially smaller companies, how to come up with these data. It can't be that we are running these big concepts and methodologies like Mitsubishi or BASF, because we don't have the capacities and the resources to do so. But we will request it.
That's a lot of things and tasks ahead of us, I have to say. And maybe to broaden the picture a little bit, to look at the global aspects. Of course, we are fully aware that a company not operating and not located in the EU cannot interfere with the EU taxonomy, and vice versa. You cannot ask a Japanese company only operating in Asia or Japan to comply with the EU ESG regulations. But this changes the perspectives. Once, for example, if you as a Japanese subsidiary are active in Germany, so to say, and from 2028, if I'm not mistaken, non-EU companies also have to comply to EU ESG reportings and certain standards if you're operating in the EU. And with 1, 2, 3, regardless of this aspects of the reporting, as you pointed out, the environment is an issue that has to be addressed globally anyway. So where do you see especially the German-Japanese cooperation potential? Because it cannot be addressed by just two companies anyway.
Yeah, that is very difficult question. Well, you know, each country's government consider how to the optimum such a country's environment issue. For example, in case of EU, how to keep the carbon neutrality to be achieved in the EU basis. But the Japanese government also consider how to achieve the carbon neutrality in Japanese area. Such kind of the concept may not be achieved all of the carbon neutrality system in the world. That is my opinion. For example, hard to abate industries are steel, cement, and refinery. Such kind of the industries mainly located in the domestic area or regional area. That's why such an industry should more sensitive for the how to consider the government policy. But after such a value chain, for example, chemicals and electricity product and semiconductor and automotive, such kind of the business are now the globally production system. That's why only the emission reduction in Japan is not enough for such kind of system. So That's why we should seek for some collaboration point between, for example, Japan and Germany. And also, such a government should consider such kind of the feedback should be counted in the collaboration and contribution of the carbon neutrality. So if Germany and Japan will have such kind of the feedback system each other, I think the collaboration between two countries would be more encouraged. That is my idea.
Yeah, and I fully support. I think it's a very interesting idea. I would answer in two layers where I see challenges coming up. Number one is when you look at the regulatory level, we have just seen the Inflation Reduction Act of the United States, where there's a huge subsidy with 750 billion coming into the economy. Now the question is, what does this do to economies globally? Because at the same time, we have in Europe the Green Deal with this more than 7,000 regulations with significant impact on certain parts of our value chain, which is also replacing some of the molecules in future. And then you have in Asia lots of economies that will, with increased coal input, produce products. So what I'm trying to hint towards, there are two big continents moving now big time with different levels of subsidies in a green economy. And then you have a partially solar, wind, but also coal-based economies moving imports into these kind of economies. So this, and to Ikegawa-san's point, will lead sooner or later to questions on trade policies. And here I think if Japan is also moving into this area, the question is there collaboration space? Because my worry is that the globalized system will get, from a competitiveness cost level, relatively distorted. And that's a real danger, I think, because we see it already now with the gas situation in Germany, when our production partially was wind down, lots and lots of imports came via the Turkey logistic hub into Europe, and Rotterdam port, and so on. And this is a deep impact on our value chains. If the gas situation doesn't optimize, then it has an impact on the depth of value chains in Europe. And this is where I'm a little bit, saying we have to be very careful now that the global incentives are more aligned. Otherwise, we are deglobalizing markets. The second element is on the reporting. And here, I think I'm really appreciating the cooperation we have, and Ikegawa-san was a front-runner pioneer with his company to help to make a bridge to build a common language, because in Europe we are all struggling also with the very, very complex taxonomy. Now, it was clear we all run today's profit system based on the invention of the balance sheet by Luca Pacioli. I don't know whether everyone knows, 500 years ago, he invented the balance sheet, was a friend of Leonardo da Vinci, but there was no climate change, no digitalization. And now, after 500 years developing the classical profit view, we are now all of a sudden coming up with environmental cost and social. It's clear that every country looks for its own approach. But also here, much more collaboration is needed, because how should we, as global companies, report in future? We cannot differentiate this country by country. We don't even have so much people to do this, and it's even from a reporting standard undoable. So we need urgently more harmonization, and that's why I'm glad there was a G7 impact task force who is doing exactly this kind of language collaborative work, because it's more than necessary to come to a simple system so that also SMEs can speak the language, that it is scalable and leverageable across industries.
Maybe to add on this one, here's one of the key bridges what we currently see between also the German and the Japanese government. We have talked a little bit about the standard setters, and it's good that the international standard setters are there in the end consolidating this whole field of frameworks and organizations working on standardization of reporting and data collection. So Ori pointed out the G7 Impact Task Force. So we should consider that Japan has the next presidency of the G7. the German finance ministry lobbied heavily in the background that the G7 are really fully supporting the sustainable finance agenda, including international standard setters like the ISSB. And please never forget the Global Reporting Initiative next to it, to build in the end this double materiality sense what we have in Europe. And this is really the call in the end on the Japanese government to use the presidency to further support and push this movement towards what's called a global baseline of sustainability reporting. But here I'm coming back to one point Gerhard made in the beginning. It can't be done only by the governments, it can't be done only by the finance institutions and financial market, and it can't be done only by the corporates. So we really need to talk to each other, we need to collaborate intensively, and this is what I sense is currently really missing, that these three key players, including the standard setters, sitting together, and this could be a really, really good opportunity also to intensify this collaboration between Japan and Germany to bring these key players together and building the bridge of the G7 presidency.
Thank you very much. I think this leaves room for questions. Maybe you have been triggered by one or two statements you've heard today, or maybe you've brought your own questions knowing that you have the experts on stage today. So we would like to give you the chance to raise your questions and to ask them. And I see the first hand, Mr. Kamata.
Yeah, my name is Hiroyuki Kamata from Toray Industries. Thank you for great the discussion today. Maybe this question is raising to Ms. Dubourg. In order to deploy the sustainable, low carbon, carbon neutral chemical products, the keeping a profit is a prerequisite for us to continue the R&D and the deploy in the market. However, that from our business scene day by day, our downstream customers always welcome us to encourage to do so, but when it comes to the price discussion, however, they always ask us the same price. Yeah. So may I ask that what arguments or maybe tool will be convincing the downstream customers to share the financial burden with the chemical industry?
That's a very nice question and know exactly what you talk about. Well, we saw this in the beginning as well, and it's still in many cases very challenging because a lot of the input factors of the environmentally friendly products have partially higher costing also in the balance sheet, as you said. Now, we recently saw, though, that this renewable input, for example, if you think about biomass and others, also comes with a certain limitation, for example, in availability. Yeah, and customer dialogues, we need to make clear that they have a shelf space advantage if they have access to these raw materials, plus can put this and position it at customers as an advantage in their industry. So the biggest task for us, I have a concrete example where we had one customer in the cosmetic industry who worked on a big contract with us, and I'm very thankful. I think they did a clever strategic decision to lock these quantities in, and once they advertised this, all the other customers wanted it too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the biggest challenge is to get over the first hurdle. But as I said, the challenge is for us in the P&L with the environmental cost reduction that it's not even seen in the capital market. So I think it will take a while. It's not a satisfying answer, but our experience is we have to go for first movers and then create a pull, on the customer side.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Idris Brockman Sabis from company Nightly Coats and an SME. We deal with digital transformation and try to make it sustainable. And most of our customers are SMEs. And I'd be very interested in knowing the methodology you have to make things applicable, because from the regulatory side, you have basically two kind of things. You have very theoretical goals, And sometimes you have things which are forbidden. For instance, the use of special materials is forbidden. Then in this case, it's very clear. But for the other part, which is more a very theoretical goal, how do you do that at a corporate level? Which methodology do you have to translate this into concrete measures that you can apply?
So I think this is one of the unique selling points what we have in this alliance, that the methodologies we are developing are directly tested in day-to-day business applications. So that we see what kind of data do we need, what kind of data are already there, how robust are they, and is this really business relevant what we are doing. So in the end, these key notions, pragmatic, scalable and transferable. The challenge what you see, especially within the legislations upcoming from the European Commission, is we pull out a legislation which has never been applied in the market. You see this explicitly with the taxonomy these days, so you can expect that over the next 2 to 3 years, correct me if I'm wrong, the taxonomy data will not have any impact and uptake by the financial market until we have a certain understanding and until the taxonomy is adjusted. So, and this is what I mentioned before, we are now currently really reaching out to SMEs to see if they can apply the methodologies we are developing also based off the experiences of the big corporates in the end to guide you, to support you, and you can say make this big Ferrari what we have in place for the big corporates to a smart small Tesla that you as SMEs can really drive this forward. And happy to talk to you this through, to engage with you and to see if you can build on what the big corporates have learned.
Can I just add one question here, because I heard you're also carrying out pilot projects with companies. Are there any SMEs included in those?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Markus Schreiber from Electroautomatic. We do test and measurement systems, for example, for hydrogen systems. And I think that hydrogen and along with hydrogen also ammonia is a big driver for to achieve the ESG goals we just discussed here. From my point of view, Japan and Germany do not have the opportunity to manufacture or to produce enough hydrogen to be at least for the chemical industry or for the automotive industry, which might be required to achieve all the goals. So, are you envision maybe to partner up as companies or as on also from the government side, maybe to go into countries like Africa, like Indonesia or Latin America to ensure that we source the hydrogen potentially before China does it?
As per the green hydrogen, there are the many kind of the sources. For example, the before the green hydrogen, I think the blue hydrogen would be materialized before materialized first. Then such kind of hydrogen, according to the demand growth of hydrogen, the green hydrogen the production would be increasing. And also the pink hydrogen that is come from the nuclear plant. Such hydrogen also may be counted as a green hydrogen future. So as I mentioned, there are many kind of the green and blue hydrogen. And but important point is transportation cost of the hydrogen is very expensive. That's why I think if we will obtain the stable green or blue hydrogen at a reasonable cost, our production system should be established in that area. That is a basic strategy. But now the Japanese government, I don't know the German government, but especially the Japanese government very stick to utilizing the importing green hydrogen in Japanese industry. I think such kind of the scenario would not be realized in the future. So, as I mentioned before, such kind of some feedback system, in case we will establish the photosynthesis-based green hydrogen in Saudi Arabia. For example, Saudi Arabia is a green, the sun belt area. Sunshine is very strong. Around the triple sunshine quantity than Japan. That's why the electrical breakup system or direct breakup system of the water would be reasonable, would be feasible. If so, we should make our olefins business in Saudi Arabia, and then some product should be imported to Japanese market, and after that we should have some compound method for such kind of olefins for the final application. Such kind of value supply chain would be established for from the viewpoint of the carbon neutral in the future. But the point is how to keep the geographically security also. That's why such kind of the projects should be, collaboration with government. It means a national project for the time being.
Thank you very much. My name is Yumiko Kato, and attorney from Nishimura Asahi, a Japanese law firm. Among the ESG area, the supply chain due diligence is one of the hot topic areas. So Germany will implement the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, and the EU Commission just issued this draft Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. And Japanese government also just published the guideline about supply chain due diligence. So my question is, how do you manage or try to influence the conduct of suppliers? If it is within your company, you can just make some effort, but it's quite tricky to influence the conduct of suppliers. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah. Yeah, you're rightly indicating to me. No, this is indeed a real challenge, but we have processes for this. Let me explain. As an industry, we, for example, as BASF, have 70,000 suppliers. So now you can imagine the complexity we have to manage. And this is why when the German government came up with their supply chain law, and then all of a sudden the EU Commission came up with a different one, I tried in the beginning to explain also in the Sustainability Council, please be aware, 70,000 suppliers, if you have 10 points to check, it's 70,000 times 10, and even a consecutive value chain. And if, for example, France has a different law, you can even multiply it again with 10. So the first thing for the industry, which is important, that not every country comes with different regulations. Now for the German supply chain law, the way how we do it is we're currently training our staff. It's a tremendous work, because with so many suppliers and the legal duty, it's quite challenging to be perfect everywhere, and this is where we need to train the people to accurately look when they do contracting in supply chains. We have certain criteria they check. So what we do so far is also auditing. For example, we kind of put our suppliers in certain categories where you have a high risk category. These are regularly audited. Then you have those who have cross checks, and those where you can see from the whole supply chain, okay, this should be, from the experience from the past, clear, there is not too much of a risk. That's how we started approaching it. Maybe it's not sufficient for the future, and then we have some key cases where you also enter in dilemmas with law in other countries. That's the other challenge. And here is, for example, where sometimes we use the Human Rights Council. How would we solve this equation? That's not always easy, yeah. But we try to solve it with a maximum of auditing, maximum of checking, because not every country allows you to look into the whole chain. And this will become certainly one of the, I think, challenges going forward. As I said, it's getting hard law, and that's why we are really obliged to completely be legally sober in this aspect.
For our case, that is, I think that is not perfect countermeasure, but just our procurement team issues enquete sheet for the checking of the abusement of the human right. So the such kind of enquete and the answer can be believable or not. That is the point. But anyway, at the first, how to say, protect line, such kind of the activity is now the very, how to say, usual case in the Japanese company.
Looking at my watch, we have one question can be taken, I think. Mr. Ono.
Last question?
Yes, please.
My name is Ono from Mitsubishi Corporation, but I have two questions.
Okay.
So we have talked about green hydrogen sometimes, and so Germany needs to import green hydrogen, and Japan needs to import green hydrogen. So everyone wants to have green hydrogen. So do you expect in the future such kind of competition, or so? I mean, competition of who get the green hydrogen. Mm-hmm. And maybe second question, I try. Especially EU or Germany has many regulation of environmental regulation like EU ETS or maybe CBAM in the future. And I think Japan and Germany have no problem to achieve such environmental goal or CO2 reduction. But I think the other countries, so we talked, I think Saori-san said also, inclusion of every industries, but inclusion of every country is also important. And how could you include and reach inclusion of countries such as maybe Russia, maybe China, or maybe India? I don't know, but yeah, this is my second question.
Okay, we have the industrial gas business in the United States and also Europe. So the hydrogen business is now the so-called HYCO business. That is just gray hydrogen business. But in the US, I think that is the most advanced area because they can storage the CO2 in the ground. That's why I think the US may be the big advantage for the blue hydrogen. And I think the US, maybe they have the policy not to export such kind of the hydrogen to the competitors. So as a realistic view, if in the US we the blue hydrogen would be very stable supply, we should establish our production system in US. For example, we have the MMA, that is one of the basic petrochemical products. But we have the unique process for the MMA. We can use the methanol and ethylene for the MMA process. If such a blue hydrogen would be obtained, we can make a methanol in the US, and such a methanol can be absorb the CO2, as I mentioned before. That's why our MMA project in US is a beyond zero project. If so, I think the US government receive such kind of project and also may give some subsidiary. Yeah, that is how to say. Actual business bargain power. And also the Middle East, now the many countries, not only Japan and Germany, rush to the Middle East to get natural gas and the future the hydrogen. So the too much competitive, just to give big profit to Middle East player. We should avoid such kind of situation. That's also the one of the actual business situation, I think.
Yeah, maybe to build on what you said also. For us, I mean, as I said, the situation is different, for example, country by country even. Yeah, for example, when you look at the United States, they are LNG exporter at the moment. When you look at the price points of wind and solar, they are pretty okayish. Wind onshore is pretty competitive in the United States. But we see also, as you said, hydrogen, lots of investment coming up in Middle East, and that will lead to certain cooperation competition, let's call it this way. Where we are still putting our heads around is what Ikegawa-san pointed out, the costing situation on green hydrogen and transportation issues is pipelines. That's currently the bottleneck, and that's why what I foresee in Europe is a combination of energy mix, because what we see, and that's what I meant country by country, for example, Belgium is working on CCS, CCU as one option. We see in the UK they are building clusters of hydrogen spots with their industry. We see, for example, in Germany also a build-up of wind and solar projects, with the Netherlands also doing there a lot. So I see Spain, for example, will develop in the solar grid. Yeah. So if we are clever, we use the strengths of these different grids smartly. Yeah. And also from a competitive point of view, I think it's good to have the best solution from a costing position, yeah, depending on where your production site is. On your CBAM question and small countries and how to include them, as I said in my overview of the different incentives that are now from a regulation coming up, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Green Deal, and what's going on there, as I said, you know, it will depend on whether the global countries on a political framework can agree more on joint incentives and industry policy. Whether I'm optimistic at the moment, I'm not sure, because at the moment, unfortunately, I see a lot of tension fields in the global debate, so that this could be also used as trade barriers. And for us as industry, this would be really difficult, because our, you know, market and the interconnectivity of our value chain is global. Yeah, and this is what I see as a real challenging point going forward. If this continues, businesses are interlinked by now. There are no country-specific businesses, yeah, and that is something we have to then discuss from an economy point of view with politicians as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we could continue those discussions on.
No question.
No question.
I promise no question, just a short comment. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Nurettin Tekin. I'm the hydrogen product manager at Kawasaki Gas Turbine Europe. We are working for many decades in the energy business, and we are located next to Frankfurt, so we know the energy market of Germany and European energy market quite well. And what we can see is that it took 20 years until we understand that all electrical world idea is not realizable. And couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, we start to understand that besides electrons, we need molecules. So this is a recently development. So after making this big mistake, we lost a lot of time, more than 20 years. We start to understand that we need molecules, but what we can see is that we are doing the second mistake in sticking only on green electricity, green molecules. Everything is green. Of course, this is a wish, or let me say, this is what we desire, but we have to be realistic. And the challenge especially in the energy business, because it's the decarbonized energy is the key, is the base for all of our business. We have to realize this. When we stick on green, only on green, yeah, especially in the beginning, this would be a very big mistake. So we heard about a lot of different colors of hydrogen. So my let me say my key appel is to you. Please do not stick only on green, because the challenge is so huge. We need each technology, each hydrogen sources, especially to implement a hydrogen infrastructure. When we wait until we get enough energy, a green energy, we will miss all of our energy goals, our climate goals, 2040, 2050, and so on. So the challenge is much huger than we are thinking about that. And please let us get out of the discussion of colors of hydrogen. Let us focus on CO2 footprint. When we do this, then the acceptance, or especially in the public discussions, when we just focus on the CO2 footprint, then we get acceptance for blue hydrogen, or is the acceptance increase for blue, for pink, for turquoise. So there are a lot of different technologies to produce hydrogen, not with CO2. So the product is hydrogen and solid carbon. They are based on pyrolysis, plasmolysis, and so on. So my wish is to get off of this thinking of this rainbow of hydrogen. There are a lot of colors.
Yes. So my idea is now we should set up, Anne, another event on hydrogen, international green and blue and etc. hydrogen markets. I think there is room for discussion for that then. But now I think we have to come to an end, and I would like our panelists to give a very, very close, short closing comment. And the key question here would be, from your point of view, what would be the next big milestone to come to really realize this vision of sustainability accounting being implemented in every big company and also the SMEs? So what's the next big milestone? Maybe we start with Mr. Heller.
Thank you. No, I think, as pointed out, the G7 will play a major role in this game. And next to the G7, for sure, the G20, there needs to be a strong governmental and political support of these goals, with all the difficulties and challenges we will have, because in the end, we're talking about a fundamental system change when we're talking about accounting. And it needs to be pushed by the governments. We need to rely on the financial market to request additional data from the corporates. And we need frontrunners like BASF and Mitsubishi Chemicals who are testing this out at the corporate level to demonstrate what's in, what's not in, what are the benefits, what are the challenges and the limitations. And then we are at least 3 steps ahead.
Yeah, shall I? Yeah. You know, I think for me the biggest hurdle is, or the thing that we have to overcome is mindset, because in Germany I observe a lot of discussions where we see a lot of problems. And I would like to encourage us to look more into solutions, because this event today is about a solution creation also between Japan and Germany, but it's much more. 140 new markets are coming up, and the same is true for the accounting. It will not be easy. We are not naive, right, Christian? This is 500 years of P&L usage challenged at this point in time, but the key for the accounting for me is simplicity. We are very good in creating we call it in Germany, eierlegende Wollmilchsau. I don't know how to translate this in English. It's like an egg wool producing whatever pork. So, you know, integrating everything in one solution. We are very good at this also here in Germany. So sometimes simplicity, starting with first key PIs that we can agree upon globally, will be key. So for me, in the spirit of the solution, I mean, Alan Key once said, the only way to predict future is to create it. And I think that's what we both also try. We will have failures, but hopefully we also will have solutions. And for that, I'm really glad for the dialogue today.
Thank you very much. So my short comment is I think that this carbon neutrality is based on the time frame issue. So, now very much discussion from the viewpoint of the measurement CO2 and from viewpoint of the very long-term the R&D matter and also the big subsidy from government side and the carbon pricing, the introduction in the society. But all of the things may take some time. But we should not wait for such kind of how to say solution from outside. We should do by myself to improve our reduction of the CO2 emission. That may be the point of this carbon neutrality. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for everybody. Especially, we will continue as DJW our solution-driven, maybe not always simple dialogue between Germany and Japan. And it was an honor having you today. Mr. Heller, Mr. Dubourg, Mr. Ikegawa, thank you very much. A round of applause to all of you. And to our online audience, I will have to leave you off to your evening and to your day. The live stream has come to an end. 90 minutes, as I promised at the beginning. It was gone within a blink of an eye. We hope you enjoyed it. Wherever you're located right now, please stay safe, please stay well, and stay with DJW. Thank you very much. And to everybody